Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, hello. My name is Cami, and what I like to do here on YouTube is I like to cover true crime cases that have not been heavily talked about, which is exactly what we're doing today. So, y'all, I know last week I talked about Tyler Hadley and what an entitled piece of shit he is, but oh boy, I think this guy might beat out Tyler Hadley for first place of entitled pieces of shit. So, if it's not obvious, I'm not gonna be nice to this guy, and I know you're not supposed to speak ill of the dead, but this guy deserves it. So today, we're gonna talk about a case from 2014 that I remember was really the first time I became aware of this guy's, I don't want to say ideology, but he's an incel, okay? We're gonna be talking about an incel. The 2014 Isla Vista shootings perpetrated by Elliot. So if you don't know who he is, buckle in, because I don't have words. So Elliot was born on July 24th, 1991 in London, England, and his parents were Malaysian research assistant Lin Chen Roger, and she had worked on the set of a bunch of movies. She had worked on the set of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade as a unit nurse, and his father was British filmmaker Peter Roger, and one of his best-known works was The Hunger Games, and he was the second unit director. He had one younger sister, and his grandfather was a photojournalist named George Roger. So this guy had, such connections in the movie industry, and he could have had a great career. But instead, he chose to be a piece of shit, so... At some point later in Elliot's life, his family immigrated to the United States, and he was raised in Los Angeles, California. And shortly after they moved to Los Angeles, his parents divorced, and his father remarried a Moroccan actress. And I already know I'm going to butcher this name, so forgive me. Her name was Somaya Akabone. I know I'm not saying that right, but... And shortly after they got married, they had a second son. So it's, Elliot's the oldest, then they have this young daughter, and then he's got a third child from another marriage. Around the time that Elliot was 8 years old, he had started getting treated for a variety of various mental illnesses, but Elliot adamantly refused to take any of his medication. And at one point his mother said that she thought he suffered from Asperger's syndrome, but he was never formally diagnosed with this. His father also said he noticed that Elliot had some anger problems in his young life, that he never really thought it was anything to worry about because, according to him, Elliot was a happy kid, and apparently he was also a very kind child, which, if that's true, I don't know where it changed, but he definitely wasn't like that in his adult life. In elementary school, he apparently kind of had a few friends, but he was very selective about who he was friends with, so he was kind of sounds like the snobby kid, we don't want to be friends with you, like the popular kids, but he wasn't popular. His father also said that Elliot had OCD when it came to picking his friends, and look, I don't like using that term because I don't think it should be used unless you're formally diagnosed with OCD because of the stigma that's around it. But I'm just quoting what his father said. Elliot had to have all of his plates in the same place all the time, and he would always wear the same kind of clothes, so that's why his father thought he possibly had OCD. And it's possible that he did have OCD, but I don't like throwing around that term unless it's to describe someone who has been formally diagnosed with OCD. Elliot later in life claimed that he was bullied in school and had a hard time making friends, but if they actually spoke to some of his schoolmates, and they said that it wasn't that people didn't want to be Elliot's friend, it's that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with him, so I guess they just kind of stopped trying. Elliot said no one wanted to be his friend. Schoolmates said that's not true. I think I'm gonna believe the schoolmates, given this guy's later actions. According to Elliot, and... Okay, I'm laughing because his schoolmates said none of this is true, and I know kids can lie, but according to Elliot, he had food thrown at him, he was shoved into lockers, and in his diary he said, quote, "I was an innocent, scared little boy trapped in a jungle full of malicious predators, and I was shown no mercy." None of this even happened to Elliot, apparently, and he's just saying anything in his diary, but go off, I guess. Once Elliot turned 13, he got into World of Warcraft, which is where he made most of his friends at. It was raining earlier, and now the frogs have decided to show themselves. So, if you hear that, I'm sorry. I can't do anything about it. So this journal that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, Elliot wrote in it pretty frequently. And he said in his journal that his rage began to build at a young age, and that because of the fact that he was the son of a Hollywood insider, he called it a front row seat. And he said, quote, "My little 9-year-old self realized that there were hierarchies, and that some people were better than others. Jealousy and envy, those are two feelings that would dominate my entire life and bring me immense pain." Elliot actually went to 2 different high schools before he ended up at a very small high school called Independence High, which only had about 100 students in it. And I look at my graduating class had like 800 people in it. So I look at 100 students in the whole school and I'm like, that sounds horrible. Eventually YouTube becomes a thing, obviously. And Elliot moves on from like a physical diary to a video diary, and he starts using his YouTube channel as like a video diary. Many of his posts talk about how lonely he was and how he would often be rejected by others, specifically girls. And a lot of his posts were very anti-feminist and misogynistic, and he visited what's known as the Manosphere. Basically, this is a collection of like social media sites and other sites, so like Reddit, 4chan, and it promotes masculinity, misogyny, and some of the well-known movements that are chronicled in this manosphere are men's rights activists, pickup artists, fathers' rights groups, and incels. Now, if you don't know what incels are, because a lot of people don't, as I'm learning, it's short for involuntary celibates, and basically they believe that for whatever reason, women don't want to be with them, and they say that women don't go for men like them, that women go for chads, which to them, a chad is like just a normal guy, and they call women that go for chads, they're known as Stacy's, and the women that go for the incels are known as Becky's. I don't know why they chose these names specifically. I don't want to get inside the mind of an incel, but here we are. And I specifically say that men believe that women don't want to be with them because incels can only be men. They don't let women be in these like incel groups because by their own definition of the word, women can't be incels because according to them, all a woman has to do is look at a man and he'll have sex with her. I don't know. Their beliefs are weird. Incels, their beliefs promote violence against women. They want government-funded slaves for not so nice things, and they want to legalize these not so nice acts. They also want to legalize relations with family members because they believe that it's a mother's responsibility or a sister's responsibility to be with their male family members in that way since they brought them into the... They also think it's justifiable to assault women if they reject them. It's a whole gross movement, and I won't go too much further into it, but basically, they blame women for them not being able to sleep with women. Most of them are white males, and they have been classified as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So if you go onto the incels Wikipedia page, it's a rabbit hole. I ended up getting lost in this rabbit hole when I went to go research this case, and... You remember that guy Nathan Lawson that was running for Congress that recently got busted because he tried to transport a minor across state lines? He, kidnapped this 12-year-old girl to use her for these not so nice acts. Yeah, he visited a lot of these incel pages, these incel websites. He also wants to legalize relations between fathers and daughters, and I'm trying to keep my language as family-friendly here as I possibly can. But this Nathan Lawson guy is basically one of the big faces of incel groups. Elliot actually sent some of these messages to his dad, and his dad was appalled. His dad was like, "Why are you on these websites? These websites are not good. Why do you go to them? These websites are evil. So his dad was just baffled as to why Elliot would be wanting to go to these websites. Elliot said he had problems finding a girlfriend, and this dramatic dude even said in his YouTube video that he posted right before he did what he did that, quote unquote, I mean, look at me. I'm gorgeous, but you girls don't see it. I don't understand why you're so repulsed by me. I don't know, man. It's totally not because you subscribe to incel ideology. No, women are the problem, of course. So as he gets older, Elliot really starts honing in on the idea of losing his virginity and having sex. Even though his dad told him that there's nothing wrong with losing your virginity as an older person, Elliot really didn't care. He started really believing, probably due to this manosphere, that he was owed sex. Elliot wrote in his journal, quote, "Finding out about sex is one of the things that truly destroyed my entire life. Sex. The very word fills me with hate. I would always covet it. I would always fantasize about it, but I would never get it." Elliot's dad said that he tried to talk about this issue with his son, but he kind of chalked Elliot's nervousness around girls and his inability to talk to girls as normal teenage jitters, because he's starting to become a teenager and, it's hard to talk to girls. Even as a 27-year-old woman, it's hard to talk to girls. I can't imagine as a teenage boy. So that's kind of what Peter really thought was going on. Not that Elliot was angry over the fact that he couldn't have sex. Peter also thought that Elliot's feelings on sex could also possibly be chalked up to him being jealous of the attractive Chads having girlfriends and him not. But Peter said he never expected to have all these thoughts in his head that Elliot did. He said that he didn't think that Elliot was planning to get revenge on the women that wouldn't have sex with him. And he said this in an interview with Barbara Walters.
Choose chastity.
He would say, I can't get a girlfriend?
He would say, they're never going to like me because I'm not 6'2", a jock. Sporty guy. He did say to me once, I wish I wasn't half Asian. I never realized that he was so racist.
According to his parents, by the time that Elliot turned 18, he was really starting to show the rage that he felt over not being able to get a girlfriend. On June 4th, 2011, Elliot moved to Isla Vista so that way he could attend Santa Barbara City College, but he ended up dropping out in February of 2012, which is kind of my first go at college. I dropped out after the first semester. Thankfully, that's the only thing me and this crazy person have in common, though. So in 2011 to 2012, Elliot was involved in a whole bunch of incidents involving couples where he would just throw drinks on them because he was jealous. Now, on July 20th of 2013, he attended this party to try and interact with some of the girls there, but the girls there just didn't want anything to do with it. Let me say this. If you are a woman, you have kind of a radar when someone is a creep. And I'm pretty sure that Elliot couldn't get a girlfriend because women could sense this in him. Because he was an average looking dude. If I saw him on the street, I wouldn't be super impressed, but he was an average looking dude. So his inability to get a girlfriend had nothing to do with how he looked, at least in my opinion. So the same night that he was at this party, he was repeatedly ignored by women because, like I said, they probably suspected that something was off about him. So in response to this, he left the party. No, he didn't. He didn't leave the party. Instead, he opted to try and push a girl off of a 10-foot ledge. I just can't wrap my head around this. It gets worse, but I just can't imagine, me ignoring a dude and him pushing me off of a ledge. I can now, but at the time I couldn't. Thankfully, though, he was stopped by other men at the party who ended up pushing him off the ledge instead. I want to say I'm not laughing because I think it's funny, but I'm laughing because I think it's funny. I hate this guy, and anything bad that happens to him, I think he deserves it all. He leaves the party after he's been pushed off of this ledge, but he realizes he forgot his sunglasses. So he tries to go back to the party, but of course the guys that pushed him off the ledge are there, and they don't want to let this crazy guy in the party, You just tried to push a girl off of a 10-foot ledge. What the hell is wrong with you? So when he goes back to get his sunglasses, the same guys that pushed him off the ledge ended up just beating the crap out of him. And as a result, Elliot broke his ankle. Which, like, stumble home bitch, I guess. So Elliot's dad picks him up from the party, and he tells his dad that he was beaten up, called the F slur, and when he went to go file a police report, he told them the same thing. And the cops kind of brushed it off because they thought he was the aggressor, and according to Elliot and his manifesto that he wrote, this is kind of what really set him off and pushed him to start planning his next move. He said, quote, "It was only when I first moved to Santa Barbara that I started considering the possibility of having to carry out a violent act of rage. This was the final solution to dealing with all the injustices I've had to face at the hands of women in society." Maybe I'm looking too far into this, but the way that he words that final solution really kind of makes me think there's some anti-Semitic views going on there. But that's just my opinion. I wouldn't put it past this guy because if you know anything about incels, they also are very racist and very anti-Semitic, so that's why almost all of them are white males. So September rolls around, and Elliot had saved up a considerable amount from his parents and his grandparents giving him money. He starts going to shooting ranges, and he purchased 2 Sig Sauer P226s and a Glock 34 from 3 different cities, which I know the gun control debate is a hot one, but I feel like at that point, if you're going around to all these different cities, there should be a flag. Like, right? Something should have flagged his name that he's trying to buy different guns in different cities, but maybe I'm a bleeding heart liberal, I don't know. That just seems like a common sense gun law to me, but this was 2013 and gun laws were even more lax back then, so I guess I'm not really too surprised. The day that he bought these guns was also the day that he started working on his manifesto. He titled this manifesto My Twisted World: The Story of Elliot Ritter. And on January 25th, 2014, Elliot performed a citizen's arrest on his roommate, Chang Yuan Hong. And I'm butchering these names. I am so sorry. But that's how it looks like it should be pronounced. And he accused his roommate of stealing a set of candles that belonged to him. So after the citizen's arrest, Chang Yuan pled guilty to a petty theft charge, but the charges were dismissed because of a lack of evidence. I understand this dude's not thinking like a normal person, but me personally, if my roommate, who's also my best friend, stole some candles from me, I'd just be like, did you borrow my candles without permission? I wouldn't perform a citizen's arrest on her. April 30th, Elliot uploads this YouTube video, which has his parents freaking out when they see it. The video showed Elliot in the driver's seat of his car, and he is going on this tirade against women, blaming them for his inability to get a date. And his mom was the one who originally saw it, and she called his dad and was like, hey, you need to go on YouTube, you need to go look at Elliot's YouTube, you need to see what's going on. And his parents called the police, but when the police interviewed Elliot, he kind of downplayed it. So I guess they were like, hey, why are you talking about this? Why are you saying this? And Elliot was like, I was just acting. I wasn't serious. I don't know if that's what he said, but I imagine that's how I imagine that's what he said. But the police decided that he did not meet the criteria for an involuntary mental health hold, nor was there any reason to legally search his residence, so they left. By this time, Elliot had already written his manifesto, and he had already bought his guns, so if the police had searched this guy's residence, if they had taken this as serious as it was, this whole thing could have been prevented. So that's what makes me so mad, is that if police had just done their job, then this could have been avoided. May 23rd, 2014 is what Elliot called the Day of Reckoning. He stabbed 3 people to death, his roommate Chang Yuan, as well as his other roommate George Chen and their friend Wei Han Wang. It's suspected that he stabbed Wei Han first and then moved on to Chang Yuan and then George, and that all 3 of these attacks were separate. So he went from room to room stabbing them, is what they think happened. Wei Han was stabbed 15 times and slashed 23 times in the head, neck, hands, arms, chest, and back. Chang Yuan was stabbed 25 times and slashed 12 times in the head, neck, chest, back, and both arms and hands. And George was stabbed 94 times and slashed 11 times in the head, neck, chest, back, and both arms and hands. He also tried to cover up the murders, and I couldn't find exactly how he tried to cover up the murders. At 9:17, Elliot uploaded his final YouTube video, Elliot Rogers Retribution, and this is where he described what he planned to do and what his motivations were. And this is the video that really went viral. So, like, it's the one that they showed in every single news report when this happened, and I remember watching as this was going on, and I was just as disgusted then as I am now. He then sent his manifesto a minute later to 34 people, including his parents and other family members, his therapist, former school teachers, and childhood friends. He then went to the Alpha Phi sorority house near the University of California, Santa Barbara, with the intention of killing all of the occupants inside. He knocked on the front door, and no one answered, and when his knocks went unanswered, he shot 3 Delta sorority sisters who were nearby. And unfortunately, this ended up killing a girl named Catherine Cooper, and he killed her by shooting her 8 times, including in the left side of the head, the left flank, and the right lung. He also killed a girl named Veronica Weiss, who he shot 7 times in the chest and the lower pelvic area. And he also wounded a girl named Bianca DeCoke, I think that's how you say it. Then he drove further into town after he had attacked the sorority house and killed these innocent girls. And he fired into the Isla Vista Deli Mart from inside of his BMW. And he ended up killing a student named Christopher Michaels Martinez. Alright, I'm about to get mad again. After he shot Christopher, Elliot drove away from the Isla Vista Deli Mart, and he was spotted leaving by 4 responding foot patrol officers. But they didn't think he was the shooter at the time and let him flee. I keep reading about all the stuff in this shooting that police didn't do, and I can't get over this, because this could have been avoided completely if, first of all, they had taken him into custody, or searched his house and then taken him into custody. This whole thing could have been avoided. It could have had way less fatalities than it did if they had taken him when they saw him fleeing in his BMW. So after he's shot and killed this Christopher guy, he then continued on his shooting rampage, and he shot at several pedestrians in drive-by shootings, and he hit others with his car. So now he's moved on from just shooting people to hitting people with his car. And at some point, he drove down the wrong side of the street, like the wrong side of the road, so that way he could hit more cars with his cars, which I don't know what he was gonna do if he hit someone head on and he couldn't use his car anymore. He wounded 12 people in the rampage. It was 6 by gunshots and 6 with his vehicle. And at one point, he got into a brief gunfight with a responding sheriff's deputy and escaped unharmed. Near the end of the rampage, Elliot got into a brief gunfight with 3 sheriff's deputies near a little acorn park, and he suffered a gunshot wound to the left hip, and he fled, but was closely pursued by police now. So at this point, they're like, oh, this is the guy that is doing this shooting. This is the guy that's doing all this. So finally, they're taking it seriously. He crashed into a bicyclist named Keith Chung, and he seriously wounded him, but thankfully Keith did not die. And it's at this point that Elliot took one of his guns and drew it on himself and fatally shot himself in the head. So police are investigating the crashed BMW and handcuffed both Elliot and the cyclist Keith because they thought that Keith was a second gunman. So later they determined that Keith was an injured victim and they released him from police custody. And the day after the killing spree, the officers went to Elliot's apartment to investigate it, and that's when they found the bodies of Elliot's roommates and their friend. Elliot's final YouTube video was found after the killing spree, and once they found it, they deleted it from the platform because they were like, we don't want anyone to see this. But at that point, it was too late. Everyone had already downloaded it, re-uploaded it. Segments of it were used by several news networks, including CBS, ABC, NBC News, and MSNBC. And this was very controversial at the time because they thought that by airing portions of this video that it would inspire copycats, which, as far as I'm aware, it never actually did inspire copycats specifically related to Elliot Rodger. It did inspire an SVU episode. If you've seen that episode, Holton's Manifesto, that's based on this story. But they also compared the crime and the airing of the video to Sung Hui Cho. I'm butchering these names. Again, I'm sorry. The Virginia Tech shooter, who I've also got a video planned for. Just like Elliot, the Virginia Tech shooter had a highly detailed manifesto and a series of videos, one of which was also taped from inside of his vehicle before he went on his shooting. And after this series of videos was found, just like with Elliot Rodger, they aired these videos repeatedly, and it also sparked fears of a copycat being inspired from the crimes. On the day after the killing spree, a candlelight memorial was held in honor of the victims, and it was followed by a memorial service at University of California, Santa Barbara's Harder Stadium, and over 20,000 people attended this. So, like I said, this was really big news. I remember I was 20 when this happened. I was just about to turn 21. And I remember it being all over the news for quite a while. And like I said, this was kind of the first time that anyone had really heard of incels. I mean, I know now it's like they're all over everywhere. There's like entire Facebook groups dedicated to making fun of them. But at the time, no one really knew what an incel was. And this is when I remember a lot of... This is a side note. I know I'm a little bit off track. But this is also the first time that I remember myself and a bunch of my other female friends kind of really became aware of the types of violence that some men want to commit against us. And I remember like really kind of talking about it on social media and on Facebook and stuff like that, and really pushing to get those sites shut down because of this case. This rampage also occurred during a period of high pro-gun control and anti-gun violence sentiments in the US because of other mass shootings like 2012 Newton, the Connecticut shootings that ended up killing 27 people and injured 2 other people. And Richard Martinez, who was Christopher Michael Martinez's father, blamed politicians and the National Rifle Association for allowing the killing spree to happen. Because like I said, this guy went to multiple cities to purchase these guns. And if they had flagged his ID to try and keep him from purchasing these guns, this maybe could have been avoided from the start. I mean, yeah, I know that he could have just gotten the guns on the black market. But at least maybe they could have, kept an eye on him or something. People also started calling for the healthcare system to be improved again, and at least 2 congressmen called for discussions and bills on the topic. Critical attention was placed on Elliot's earlier interactions with the police on April 30th, where he managed to convince him that in his video he was acting. As a result of this, California legislators passed a law that would allow a person's firearms to be seized at the request of a family member if the person was believed to be a threat to themselves or others. Even Elliot's father supported the law because he had said before that if there had been laws, then they could have seen Elliot's gun purchases. and possibly prevented this. And this law came with criticisms from pro-gun rights groups, but Congress passed the laws anyway, and they went into effect in 2016. All right, now here's a fun one. When Elliott's motives for the rampage became public, it led to a bunch of different reactions. It led to women coming out and talking about their experiences with violence from men, because this is when women started really talking about when they experienced kind of pushy men or even violent men. And as a result, men started using the hashtag not all men, and this hashtag argued that not all men are misogynistic and commit crimes against women. And even though its first usage dated back to 2011, this is kind of when the phrase picked up. But rightfully so, the hashtag came under criticism for its detracting from very serious issues of violence against women. And it also came under criticism for deflecting from like the sensitive topics like sexual assault, and for not being helpful enough in this discussion of misogyny. And let me tell you, I am very tired of seeing people comment, not all men, when someone talks about their experience with violent men. Okay, I'm gonna let you know a secret. We know not all men. We know not all men are like this. The problem is that it's enough men are like this for it to be a problem. And that's not me bashing all men. It's me saying that we know it's not all men. You're not telling us anything we don't already know whenever you say not all men. So that's just what I want to say. In response to the use of the hashtag not all men, an anonymous female Twitter user came up with the hashtag yes to all women to express that while not all men are sexist, all women are affected by or live of fear under sexism or misogyny of any kind of degree. Within 4 days, the hashtag was tweeted 1.2 million times, surpassing similar hashtags that precede it. And it became known for being used by women to share personal stories of gender-based harassment and discrimination. But the discussion about misogyny also kind of generated some criticism from some people who argued that it unintentionally diverted attention away from Elliott's hateful comments about men and the fact that he killed more men than women and his mental health issues. Which, okay, he might have killed more men than women technically, but like, if he had gotten access to that sorority house, he would have killed way more women than men. Now, I said that his shooting did not inspire any copycats, but I was kind of wrong with that, because there was a massacre at Umpqua, UMPQA, Community College in Rosenberg, Oregon, which occurred in 2015. And it was the deadliest massacre to occur at a community college. It was a 26-year-old student named Christopher Sean Harper Mercer, and he opened fire with 2 handguns in his classroom, and he ended up killing 9 people, including the professor. He then committed suicide after being wounded in a shootout with responding police officers. He was armed with a total of 6 handguns, a 9mm Glock, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson, a .40 caliber Taurus, and 3 unidentified others. He was also armed with a Delton sporting rifle. And during the massacre, Christopher spared 1 student because he gave him a package to deliver to the police. And in this package, it had a similar manifesto to Elliot Rogers. He said that he had studied Elliott's rampage as well as other mass shootings similar to it. And after he gave this student this package, he continued on with his shooting. Similar to Elliott, in this manifesto, he expressed his frustration at being a virgin, and he also apparently also had undiagnosed Asperger's syndrome and other mental health issues. So what's weird about this one is usually spree killers have 1 weapon, but that wasn't the case with Elliott. He had a variety of weapons. He stabbed his roommate, and then he also used guns, 2 different kinds of guns too, and then he also used his vehicle. Elliott's original plan had been to lure as many people as possible to his apartment after killing his roommates and then stealthily kill and decapitate them. I don't know, it's weird. And then he planned afterwards to commit a murder at the Alpha Phi sorority house and then kill his brother and stepmother, then commit a series of drive-by shootings and hit-and-runs with the family SUV. In total, he killed 6 people and injured or attempted to kill 22 people, not including the numerous sorority girls that he hurt. And that is the story of Elliot Rodger, professional piece of shit. His story is just awful. Like I said, I remember when it happened, I was 20, and this was like all over social media for a very long time. What's weird about this case is that normally whenever people commit murders, their parents are usually the first ones to defend them and say there's no way my son did this, but that wasn't the case here. Elliot's father said that his son had him fooled and that his son was a good actor or a good liar, and his mother actually declined to speak out at all and said that the focus should be on the victims and their loved ones rather than on Elliot, which I agree with. At the end of the day, the victims here are the ones that I feel sympathy for. I don't really have much to say about this one. I think I've pretty much covered everything that I want to say with this one. I do agree that the mental health care in this country needs to be improved, and that possibly if Elliot had gotten the mental health help that he needed, this possibly could have been avoided, and if the cops had done their jobs, this absolutely could have been avoided. So that's my opinion on that. Let me know what y'all think in the comments below, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!